You join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Big stories, big guests and big opinions. That's right. It's tomorrow's papers in headliners with Dana Alexander and Nick Dixon. Join us in 2 minutes after the headlines with Ray.
Thanks, Mark. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. In breaking news just in, at least 3 people have been shot near a primary school in Washington, D.C. in the United States. Police say 2 adults and a child were found with gunshot wounds and have been taken to hospital. 2 of the victims are in critical condition. The other is said to be stable. Members of the public have been evacuated from the scene near Edmund Burke Primary School. Police say they can't currently be sure how many shooters were involved.
At this time, our units are currently in the area of Connecticut and Van Ness conducting a search for a suspect or suspects. That is still to be determined as our investigation is continuing this time.
Downing Street says the Prime Minister is not among those fined for a number 10 bring your own bottle garden party. It's reported several fines have been issued to people who attended the event, which took place on May the 20th, 2020. MPs have ordered an investigation into lockdown breaches, but the PM is confident he will keep his job. Madeleine McCann's parents have welcomed the news that a formal suspect has been named in her disappearance. Portuguese authorities are investigating 44-year-old convicted sex offender Christian Bruckner in connection with the case. Kate and Jerry McCann say even if the possibility is slim, they've not given up hope that Madeleine is still alive. The 3-year-old was taken from her hotel room during a family holiday in Praia da Luz in 2007. President Zelensky says Ukraine's allies are finally delivering the weapons that his country needs, and the arms will help to save the lives of thousands of people. It comes after the UN said there's growing evidence of war crimes, with Russian troops indiscriminately bombing populated areas and killing civilians. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says he'll meet with President Putin in Moscow on Monday. Meanwhile, during a meeting with US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Ukraine's Prime Minister Demis Shmyhal says his country will win the war.
They really make atrocities, they make war crimes in our country, but we have support of all civilized world. We feel it, and we would like, and we absolutely sure that we will win in this war. There is no other way for us and for all civilized world.
And Buckingham Palace has released 4 official photos to mark the birthday of the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge's youngest child, Prince Louis, who turns 4 tomorrow. The pictures taken by his mother Kate show him playing barefoot in the Norfolk sand dunes. One shows him about to begin his run-up to bowl in a game of beach cricket. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now let's get back to those headliners.
I'm Mark Dolan and welcome to Headliners, our nightly comedic romp through tomorrow's headlines. Now, hot and cold, yin and yang, salt and vinegar socks and sandals, Harry and Meghan, all incredible combinations. Let's add another to that list. It's Dana Alexander and Nick Dixon. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Now, it was very warm and summery. Suddenly it's winter again. What's going on?
I guess you asked the girl to turn the AC on if I didn't.
Are you one of those people, like, some people can struggle in the heat, others in the cold. Which are you?
I think because I'm Canadian, I can take a pretty cold day a little better than most Brits, that's for sure. But I love the heat as well.
You're familiar with snow and ice and stuff like that?
I grew up in a snowsuit.
What is a snowsuit?
You have to put on ski pants and you got to put on a big jacket and your 2 mittens. Yeah, it's like a big snowsuit for kids, similar to what skiers would wear them, right?
Sounds very professional. It's something that Nick Dixon would struggle in because you have a famously high body temperature, don't you?
Yes, well, I was born in the rain of Cumbria, so I'm used to the cold. So they've got it boilingly hot in the studio tonight to try and test me. Yeah,
it's positively tropical, and we're cooking with some hot stories, let me tell you. Let's take a look at tomorrow's front pages, and let's start with the Daily Mail. And here is their front page splash. Boris, I'll send in our tanks. PM reveals major escalation of UK help for Kyiv as he warns war may drag on and Putin could win. Also, Louis, Beach Boy at 4, is set for a new school. Of course, one of the young princes there enjoying a day at the seaside. The Daily Telegraph, France and Germany sold arms to Russia. Paris and Berlin evaded a 2014 embargo to supply almost £250 million worth of weapons to Moscow. And PM faces new Partygate fine as he shifts focus to Brexit. The Independent, Daltrey, musicians are being robbed. Streaming companies and record labels are leaving artists unable to earn a living, says the legendary Who lead singer. Recession warning as shoppers feel the pinch is another story on the front page of The Independent. Worst high street pain since 2008 as cost of living crisis bites. Meanwhile, The Guardian, new danger for PM over Partygate. Also, exciting AI tool can predict cancer return. FT Weekend, pound sinks to lowest level since 2020 as high street sales plunge. The high street, of course, often a bellwether for the wider health of the economy. The Daily Mirror, Maddie suspect quizzed by Portugal cops. Christian Bruckner has been grilled in a German jail for the first time over Madeleine McCann. Her parents, Kate and Jerry, say they welcome the news. How about Saturday's Times? Javid inquiry into gender treatment for children. Health Secretary compares political fears over trans issue to silence during the Rotherham scandal. And PM plans tank swap in defence of Ukraine. And last but not least, The Sun newspaper, Kate and Jerry, our new Maddie Hope. And footy aces bomb ordeal. Quit Man United or die. A maniac told Man United's Harry Maguire they would detonate 3 bombs planted at his home if he did not quit the club. A disgraceful and shocking story. And those are your front pages. Well, let's get to our top story from Saturday's Times, and it's a big one. Sajid Javid has called for an inquiry into gender treatment for children. And who wants to have a go at this one?
So this is my story, yes. He is inquiring into gender treatment, and the Health Secretary is comparing the political fears over trans issues to the silence during the Rotherham scandal. So basically what's happening is there is hormone treatment being given to children under the age of 18. So I think they have 2,500 children, if I'm not mistaken, that would identify as trans, but less than 10% of those are actually receiving hormonal treatment. Right. And I think the real issue, what happens with a lot of people who are going through gender dysphoria, is if you start your gender transition after you've gone through puberty, it becomes much more difficult to pass as the gender that you're representing.
Yeah, of course. I mean, what do you think about it? I just wonder because, you know, I couldn't be more sort of pro-trans. It's like being gay. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's who you are. It's your very essence, isn't it? But do you not wait until, let's say, adulthood or 18 for any kind of medical intervention, just in case that person changes their mind? Is that an argument?
Well, I don't think it's an argument because the cases of people changing their mind are extremely rare. And I have quite a few trans friends, and kids, you know, feel like they're other genders, you know, as soon as they can talk. I have a friend who transitioned at the age of 15, and when he was 4 years old, you know, he knew he was a boy. And it really has helped, the fact that his mother let him do this transition as a teenager, because he passes.
I mean, do you think there is a sort of an age at which, like, is there a threshold, do you think, for treatment? Or you'd suggest it would be puberty, potentially, for if the case was compelling enough?
Well, I think that's the thing. They don't just give out hormones and start sexual reassignment to just any child. You know, this is after speaking to specialists and psychologists for years and years and years. So these aren't decisions that are taken lightly.
Yeah, so I guess Dana would argue, and those supportive of the availability of this medication, Nick, they would take the view that it's actually abusive not to let someone that's in the wrong body have treatment that reflects that.
Yeah, but the danger is it's abusive to let kids do that before they're able to understand. It says here the Court of Appeal upheld the right to give puberty blockers to under 16s if they're deemed capable of consenting. I don't really see how they can be deemed capable of making that decision at such a young age. I mean, current science is that we don't even develop a fully rational brain until we're 25. So
well, we're still waiting for you to kick in, aren't we?
Exactly. So how can you possibly make that decision under 16?
Well, wait a minute. I mean, you can be definitively gay at the age of 14, I would suggest.
Yeah, this is different because we all know the famous cases like Kira Bell. Once you've transitioned, it's very hard to go back, and that's just too much of a tragic situation to risk doing it. I also think, why has it gone up so much? These statistics went up. I hear that it's 5,500 children on the waiting list to transition, last I checked. It went up massively in lockdown. Why did it go up so much? Most people speculated it was because of access to media and kids being at home and being confused. I just think it's too dangerous to do it. I understand the argument against it. You do it too late, it's a problem. But it's just too dangerous to do it, this amount of children. Are there suddenly that many trans people around? Or has the media and other influences just made it far more prevalent than it actually is?
Well, yes. I mean, here's the question, Dana. Is there a risk of misdiagnosis as well? So, for example, you know, lots of gay people I know are concerned that perhaps a little boy that's camp and is perhaps going to be gay will be misdiagnosed as a trans woman.
It has happened, but like I said, it is incredibly rare. And I think we have to be careful when we start interfering with people's transitions, because people start to take matters into their own hands. They start going to get surgeries in different places. I mean, obviously, this is a different instance when we're speaking about minors. But, you know, I've heard of trans people so frustrated with the gender that they were in. There's a really interesting story about Dominic Jackson from Pose, who literally tried to remove her own penis. Like, you know, you really have to be sensitive about these things.
Yeah.
If it was more, if it happened more often that people regretted these surgeries and these hormonal treatments, 100%, there would be an argument for that, but that's just not the case.
But how do we know how often it occurs? We only know about the ones we hear about. How do we know that not many people are regretting it that we never hear about?
Well, that's speculative.
Yeah, but
What do you mean if you don't hear about it? You just pointed to a case study.
Yeah, it's also speculative to say there's this many children that feel like they're in the wrong body. I mean,
How many
that's
trans people
impossible
do you
to
know?
prove. Well, that's irrelevant to the answer.
It's completely relevant. How many trans people do you know?
I don't know, I haven't counted it.
Okay, do you know any trans people that have ever regretted going through a transition? Ever? Even one?
Well, I wouldn't know enough trans people to know that.
Okay, so then I would say then it's a bit speculative, considering...
Would the majority of those cases, and you're right to, you know, draw on personal experience, but wouldn't they have been people that transitioned after adulthood?
Well, like I told you, my friend, when I was growing up in high school, did actually transition and had a mastectomy at the age of 15, and then by the age of 18 had bottom surgery.
Yeah, and she would have, in your view, he would have suffered when born in the wrong body, which is a woman's body. He would have suffered.
He lived as a boy from the time he was 8. You know, he just would not accept his gender, or the gender he was assigned at birth.
Fascinating conversation, which will, of course, rage on, no doubt. Let's head to Saturday's Telegraph now. Some ominous Russian military plans, Nick.
Yeah, Russia seeks to capture all of southern Ukraine in major expansion of war goals. So this war is obviously going to be ongoing. It's weird because the shock of it is kind of almost worn off the initial shock, but now it's just going to go on and on. And this is the top Russian commander, General Rustam Minikayev, which may be the pronunciation, who says that they want full control over the Donbass and southern Ukraine. And so the fear is that they're potentially going to Transnistria in Moldova, and that this is just going to be a big expansion of the war effort. And the counter to that is that actually it might just mean Russia intends to hold on to its current gains in the south and preserve the option for a future offensive towards Transnistria, which is not amazing either. I've watched videos from Transnistria. They are concerned about this, though some of them also are pro-Russian. And, of course, that is the thing that's being used typically from Russia to justify it. They're saying there's oppression of the Russian-speaking population, which is what Russia have been using to justify a lot of their invasion.
It's a deeply troubling development, isn't it? We were hoping, weren't we, Dana, that this war would fizzle out, that it wasn't going well for Putin, but he's clearly doubling down.
Well, I think that hope was misplaced, and I think that was incredibly naive, and I think now we have to face the reality that Russia is making advances and the Ukraine might fall.
Yeah, my goodness. And what happens then? Saturday's Mirror now, and perhaps the beginning of some semblance of justice for the McCann family, Dana, who have been through hell.
Yes, the Portuguese authorities declare a man as a formal suspect. So German police have previously said that Christian Bruckner, 44, was probably responsible for their toddler's disappearance in 2007. And so the timing of this move could be related to Portugal's 15-year statute of limitation for crimes with a maximum prison sentence of 10 years or more. So they're running out of time if they want to be able to charge anybody. And that time is going to be up, I think, is it on the 7th of May?
Right.
So they're really grasping.
Yeah, and I mean, notwithstanding the horror and the hell that family have been through, the one thing that they deserve is closure and, of course, justice. Saturday's Mail, and Boris is in India. What's he up to, Nick?
Well, he wants a free trade deal with India by the end of the year. Get it done by Diwali is his soundbite on that.
He likes getting things done, doesn't he?
He loves it. Get it done, get Brexit done. Well, this, of course, is to do with Brexit, because if we can get a free trade deal, he can say, this is a great benefit of Brexit. What party? And it's a great thing for him. Now, but Mr Modi has spoken about signing off an agreement by the end of the year, so he's not as concerned about getting it done as fast. And then there were questions about, is Boris over there to partly pressure India to reduce their trade with Russia? But apparently that hasn't been on the agenda. It's purely, allegedly, about this trade deal. And, and there's also a question of immigration. It says Boris Johnson was open to the possibility of accepting hundreds of thousands of immigrants because we need IT workers, which might sound a bit racist, but that's what's written in the article.
Isn't this... were you a Brexit supporter, if I'm allowed to ask?
I was a supporter of observing democracy.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good answer.
Would you, does this look like Brexit in action to you, Dana? Trade deals?
It certainly does. And I think he's going to have to scramble because, as we know, we are coming upon another recession. I think what's interesting is that India is doing really well out of this. They're playing both sides. They're still buying Russian oil while with this trade deal is happening. So we have to be careful of that. Yeah, well said. Couldn't agree more. Well, let's have a look at Saturday's Telegraph now, and a gloomy outlook for the economy, Dana, as you hinted at in your last answer. Yes, Britain is teetering on the brink of a recession, like everybody knew. Rising prices force shoppers to cut back on spending. So retail sales have dropped by 1.4% last month, and it follows a 0.5% drop in retail sales in February. And the pound has also dropped, trading at its lowest number since 2020, now at 129 to the American dollar, or the American dollar is 129 for £1. Yeah, I mean, there's a storm coming, isn't there? There is a storm coming, and I think it's, again, it's to be expected, right? If wages are frozen, prices are going up, something has to go. It's not rocket science. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, here we are, Nick. What do we do? The issue is that the government are being asked to support people in this position, and I understand why people are choosing now between heating their home or actually eating and feeding their own families. But there's only so much the Treasury can do, having spent £500 billion in the course of the last 2 years. On the old lockdowns, yeah, that you and me were against, so we come out well out of it. But yeah, it's not great for the country. It's crazy, isn't it? This story would have been really bad news in any other time. Now I feel like it's about the third or fourth thing today. Do you know what I mean? Against versus war, pandemics. Yeah, I'm not sure this... I mean, are you worried about the economy? We know how bad the cost of living crisis is, but do you think that there are some really, really dark clouds hovering? Because that's the view of the former Pizza Express chairman, Luke Johnson, who tweeted about it yesterday. He's talked about, you know, there's a day of reckoning coming.
for the British people.
Yeah,
he, of course, is an entrepreneur. He has meetings, and he knows how bad things are on the retail side.
Yeah, well, Luke Johnson's much smarter than me, so I would go with him.
And richer.
It's exactly.
And he's got more friends.
Yeah, he's better in every way. Well, we've been kicking the can down the road since 2008, haven't we? That was already a delay of the inevitable. Now we're delaying it again, and people are always talking about it's got to hit the fan at some point. So yes, I'm sure he's right.
Too right. Following on, The Guardian have a headline that wouldn't have been out of place in the late 1940s, Nick.
Yes, Tesco to ration cooking oil purchases as war in Ukraine hikes food prices. Like you say, it wouldn't be war without rationing. So Tesco has introduced a buying limit of 3 bottles per customer across its entire cooking oil range. Tesco and Waitrose and Morrison's have already limited it to 2 per person. And this is very tough for the snacks industry, because they need sunflower oil for their snacks. So people who make pub snacks, etc. I know you eat a lot of those, Mark.
Yes,
and it's
I do.
impossible. Obviously, you don't. You're the thinnest person on earth.
Peanuts,
but it's in
kettle chips.
You're just on everything keto, aren't you?
Do you know what
on
I
a pure meat diet? Like
I went low carb. I gave up sugar. I lost 3 stone and all my friends.
Wow. And you couldn't afford to lose that weight, Mark.
Not really.
All 4 of them.
Exactly. but the thing about it is that obviously this is the other big headache, is just the supply of important commodities around the world: wheat, vegetable oil, car parts, you name it, Dana.
Have you finished your COVID stash? Because I still have a cupboard full of dried beans.
Do you really?
I certainly do.
I'll be coming around to yours then, let me tell you.
I think what else is very interesting to note, Indonesia has actually put a ban on exporting palm oil, because what they're trying to do now that they can't get the sunflower oil is that they're trying to replace different oils in the recipes of, chips and things like that. So, the people who do have oil that could possibly replace the sunflower oil aren't necessarily going to be selling it.
Right, people are trying to get rapeseed now, and they're paying 3 times as much as they were for sunflower oil a year ago.
There are some people, by the way, that think that these processed vegetable oils aren't very good for you. Have you heard that?
Yes,
Yes,
a lot of
I
people.
have heard that.
A lot of people have moved on to avocado oil.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so maybe it could be a
oil.
blessing in disguise.
What oil do you use, Mark?
Well, funnily enough, if it's sustainably sourced, then palm oil's great because it's very stable. I was told by a top medic who's also written a book on nutrition that just take the oil from any fruit that if you squeeze it, oil comes out. So if you squeeze palm or if you squeeze olives, oil just pours out. Whereas that doesn't happen with sunflower seeds. You've got to use all sorts of chemicals to get the oil out.
So are you squeezing your own oils now at home?
Yeah, I've been squeezing stuff in my hands for years, I'll be honest with you.
Did you grow up on a farm?
Quite a habit. Yeah, I've seen others. The Guardian now. And have preppers been right all along? Dana, this story dovetails beautifully with running out of food. What is a prepper?
What is a prepper?
Yeah.
What everybody should prepare, right?
Right.
Is
it those kind of people that have got, like you, got loads of dry beans in the cupboard?
Yeah, I definitely. Well, first of all, I didn't really want to leave the house. It was also something that I could keep for a long time and store. And I mean, this isn't unheard of. And I think, it's a shame. People are actually stockpiling things like candles, matches, logs, wind-up radiators. People are buying, which I think is a little bit silly, freezers to put outside so they can store even more food, forgetting that, of course, you have to run those. And with the energy prices at what they are right now, that might not be the best solution. So, yeah, times get prepared. And I think, if anything, what can you do? I think a lot of people are going to be stocking up just because they anticipate a price rise.
Yeah, I know. Just this conversation is enough to send people to the 24-hour garage, isn't it?
I'll be there tonight.
I'm fascinated.
You're a comedian. That's basically the main shopping time, 2 a.m., isn't it?
Oh, God, the amount of times I've had to eat at the service station at 2 a.m. Oh.
Welcome to showbiz.
Welcome.
Yeah, this is why I've stopped doing gigs. I'm fascinated by prepping because I was a prepper for COVID early on when I thought it was the apocalypse. And what's fascinating is how it switched. The sort of conservative people in America were all prepping, right? And they were all buying special masks and they were buying loads of food and weaponry. And then it switched to where and the Daily Beast and Salon people were saying, COVID's nothing to worry about. And then it switched and suddenly it switched around. So COVID is a political phenomenon partly because preppers are normally right-wing and libertarian. But what's interesting here, the Guardian's found a load of lefty Brexit preppers who were prepping, worrying about supply chains and things after Brexit. And sometimes it just comes from fiction. One person here says, I've been hoarding food, water, medical essentials and general survival gear since I watched the film The Road 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And someone else has done it from dystopian fiction. And so, yeah, it's fascinating. People are going to do more and more of these things because the media makes us so scared. Pandemics, cyber attacks. nukes, asteroids, I think you're just going to see more and more prepping, Mark.
Yeah, I think you will. What are your essential cupboard basics?
Well, you've got to go with water first, right? You get one of those massive waters, right?
Okay.
And then you get, tinned food, and then you just get as many guns as you can source.
Blimey, you've turned into like an American man.
I'm the Alex Jones.
Living in sort of, Wyoming or something, on a farm.
That's
You've
my
changed.
goal. Yeah. And just for Ofcom purposes, I'm joking about the weapons, obviously. I've learnt martial arts.
He's basically a redneck now, isn't he?
Dana's the same. She said she had a load of dried
collection of guns?
food.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have 2 frozen Tories in my freezer as well.
They're
Thaw them out when I get really hungry.
always very meaty, high-quality protein. That's it for part 1. In part 2, we'll be attempting to shake off this existential gloom by talking about bullying, the leading cause of child deaths in America, and a crippling lack of UK carers. Come to think of it, we're not really shaking anything off at all. More like replacing one very sad coat with a gown made of depression. See you in 2.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners, our first look at tomorrow's papers. They call me Mark Dolan, and I'm joined by the 2 fantastic comedians, Dana Alexander and Nick Dixon. OK, let's get straight back in there, and let's have a look at Saturday's Telegraph. A student has lost her bid to sue a university, Dana. For what reason?
Yeah, so a feminist student was bullied by trans activists. She was receiving death threats and the lot because I guess she is a trans exclusionary radical feminist interested in protecting women's spaces and things like that. So she went to, and she thinks that the university has been negligent in allowing this to happen to her.
Yeah, and what do you think? Do you have sympathies with her or not?
No. I really don't. I mean, there's real violence happening to trans people all the time. In fact, violence upon trans women is 4 times more. And we start getting into these discussions about, ooh, where can trans people pee? Give me a break. What are you going to start doing? Genitalia checks before they come in? I cannot think of a single instance, I'm sure it has happened, that a trans woman has assaulted another woman in a bathroom. If somebody wants to assault you in a bathroom, they will walk in the bathroom and do it. There's no security at the bathroom doors. So if you're going to start excluding people from certain spaces, like refuge shelters, they have to go somewhere.
What do you think, Nick? I guess you might disagree on this too?
I disagree, yes. For a start, this started because it was deemed problematic to use the word maternity, which is obviously absurd on the face of it. So that's the start. Then she got into this issue where she was being bullied and she received threats and violence. And the court has acknowledged that there were threats and violence. They've just simply said legally no actionable breach of duty has been identified, which is odd because we hear so much about universities being safe spaces. They need to protect students, but they've completely failed to protect her against these threats. But what's happened by drawing attention to the case, to me, this is a moral victory, even if it's not a legal victory. She says here, the judgment confirms I was the victim of violent, threatening, intimidating behaviour by trans activist students, and she's had to come forward to remove the stigma of being a liar. So I think it's shocking that this has been ruled in this way, and I think she was completely right.
This feels like a war, doesn't it, between two sides, Dana? Who's going to win?
I don't think that we're going to be able to keep up with the banning trans people from bathrooms and all of this. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that it's such a focus, especially considering here we have a unisex bathroom. What is the real issue? Why is everybody...
but that means you've got to go into a toilet with someone like Nick Dixon. And that's very triggering for a lot of people.
Maybe I don't want to do a number 2 with Nigel Farage in the next stall. Do you know what I mean?
It's not ideal. But
well, listen, don't knock it till you've tried it, Dana, is all I'm saying.
We're not concerned about a woman being bullied and threatened, though, at her university.
Was there any actual violence that happened to her?
There was threats of violence.
OK.
Is that not... You're not bothered about that?
I'm worried about real violence. And real violence is happening to trans women all the time. I think trans women of colour have a life expectancy of something like 36. So, you know, they didn't do anything to her. She got threatened.
I mean, are there some women who are, and I'm asking rather than saying, so, you know, I'm all ears, are there some females, some women, biological women, who are not transphobic, but just don't want to be in a space where a trans woman is naked and therefore... You know, you will be in the presence of somebody with male genitalia.
If you ever understood the anxiety trans women, especially if they haven't had bottom surgery, have going into female locker rooms, I really doubt that you would see a trans woman so open. They'd probably be in a stall on their own because they are harassed and harassed and harassed everywhere they go. Would you rather a trans woman go into the men's locker room?
Yeah, well, I mean, I certainly don't show my tackle to anyone, whatever.
That was a one-off incident with us, Mark?
Well, basically, if you want that kind of gear, you've got to pay for it, is all I'm saying.
Well, the next story is about this, so I'm not going to comment more on it.
Let's keep talking about my naked body for a couple of minutes. OK, so let's move on. Staying with universities, and Plymouth University are telling women how to behave in toilets. Nick, so many stories dovetail with each other tonight.
I know, exactly. That's why I was waiting for this one. Don't challenge someone using the wrong bathroom. Woke Plymouth University sparks female safety fears with trans poster warning they must stay silent if they're concerned about a male-bodied student in the loo. So, yeah, there was this poster put around the university. It said, do you think someone is using the wrong bathroom? Please don't challenge them, stare at them, insult them. And it went on to say they are using the toilets they feel safe in. Now, of course, I'm not advocating staring and insulting people, but the whole problem with this, obviously, is that the women don't feel safe using the toilet. So that's the whole debate. They're selling it here as if it's protecting them from harm, the poster says, but no one cares, of course, about the harm of the female students, or no one who wrote this poster cares. And so critics have branded it repellent gaslighting, which I think is fairly accurate. And people have said, why can't you just have a third space instead? And I suppose the answer to that is because then it wouldn't be a political victory. I mean, yeah, you could just have a third toilet, but it seems to be partly an ideological battle, which is perhaps why, pragmatic
well, wouldn't you need 4? Wouldn't you need 4 options if you were going to do that, which would be trans women, trans men, biological women?
I don't know. I'm not sure how the logistics would work. But you could just have another toilet.
I mean...
or we should just let them do it on the lawn outside.
No, well, that's obviously mischaracterisation.
No, that's what men do. 2 in the morning.
Again, it comes to the question of, do you care about the safety of women in these spaces?
I am a woman, and I don't feel unsafe, and I think it's a red herring.
I mean,
but many don't, as we've just seen in the last piece. Many don't feel it.
Well, there's a really good quote by D.L. Hewley, which I love. The most dangerous place for a black person to exist is in a racist's imagination. So you can be fearful of anything. That doesn't mean it's a reality or a genuine risk.
I mean, one question is there a landing space here in this debate, which is that it's not appropriate for biological men to enter a female space like a changing room or a toilet? Would we agree that
no, that's what
biological men
disagreeing with that?
Biological men, but just like, for example, it's not right that I go into a woman's changing room, is it?
No.
Right?
But you're not a trans woman.
I should be kept out.
So should we keep out lesbians then from women's change areas?
Well, what I was developing just a thought, which is that I've got no right to be in a woman's changing room. How can females in a space, a woman in a female-only space, identify the difference between a trans woman and a guy that has an ill intent?
How can they identify? Well, presentation. I think, most people who are trans are usually presenting as their gender. So, I mean, if you're going to come in a beard and tell me that, you're trans...
I think that does happen, though.
Where? When?
Well, there are. I mean, you're within your rights as a trans woman to enter a female space, wearing a dress but having a beard, or even not being dressed as a female. That's within your rights.
Well, I'll tell you this: I go to a lot of gay bars, and you just check out the females' bathroom, and you'll see how many men are in our toilets. And you know what? I'm not bothered.
Fascinating stuff. Brilliant. Look at a great debate, and it is all about opinions. Let's move on to some more. Sombering data now from The Independent regarding child deaths in America. Horrible story, Dana.
This is a crazy story. So they've just found out that guns are killing more teens in America than drugs or cancer. Report finds firearm-related injuries claim 4,300 young people's lives in 2020. Guns now kill more children and teenagers in the United States than car accidents,
astonishing,
drug overdoses, and cancer, according to new research.
I mean, how is that possible? Because, you would expect, sadly, quite a high number of drug deaths because drug use is prevalent across the Western world. But kids getting shot? What's going on?
They have access to guns.
Yeah, and I guess this is all is it part of gang violence and the drug industry? Is that what's happening? It can't just be little Jimmy that picks up his dad's shotgun by accident, right?
It's a mixture.
Yeah. You are Canadian, and Canada is obviously a big part of North America, but with a very different culture around guns. Lots of guns, but fewer guns.
More than in America.
More guns in America.
Per capita.
And yet, a fraction of the gun deaths. Why is that?
That's true. Well, most of our guns are not semi-automatics. I think that's one of the big issues. People want those out of the hands of people in general. Most of our guns are used for hunting. So we're talking about big rifles. And I think the reason why we have so many guns, my mother is, before, she became a lesbian, her ex-boyfriend was a hunter, and he had probably about 30 guns. So
Sounds like a nice guy.
Well, it just depends on what you're hunting, doesn't it, right?
Did he eat a lot of red meat?
Did he have tattoos? Yeah, he fed us all kinds of red meat. I didn't know I was eating bison. They just wouldn't tell me. Oh, it's like they just say it's a burger. I had no idea I was eating a caribou. You know what I mean?
But this is a different culture. I mean, is there a less violent culture in Canada too?
I would say so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, maybe it's harder to control a gun when you're wearing a snowsuit. It's so bulky, isn't it? I can't even get my arm around this thing.
We don't have the same gang issues, and we don't have the same issues with poverty and redlining and everything else.
Yeah, a less unequal society.
Less unequal, yes, I would say so.
Interesting stuff. Well, how about this tit-for-tat story rumbling on in Florida, Nicholas?
I don't know. I was getting ready to do my.
Oh, have you got a gun? Have you got a gun opinion? No, wait a minute. No,
I don't want to. It's not going to help me. It doesn't matter.
Well, no, wait a minute. Because this is all about opinions.
No, I was just going to say. Well, obviously in the context of that story, it's a horrible story. But obviously you've proved there that guns don't. It's not the guns killing people. It's people. You've proved by the Canada anecdote. And I was just going to say that, the Second Amendment I still think is a good thing for America, because someone's going to have guns. It just means someone else will have them. Someone with more power will have them. So if you're a Hollywood celebrity, there's a famous example saying you're anti-gun, you've still got security guards protecting you, you still have guns protecting you. But that we'd get into a whole gun debate, Mark. We don't need to get into it.
Well, one thing I would say is that I wouldn't, like Piers Morgan, I wouldn't like to dictate to the American people about what their gun laws are, because I think that, great broadcaster that he struggled on his US talk show by having this campaign against guns. Because the bottom line is you will not be convincing almost half of America to get rid of their guns, will you, Dana?
Well, I think, no, but something has to be said, because especially when we're talking about things like school shootings, right? We're talking about innocent children being put at risk. They're actually doing drills for kids, what to do if a gunman comes into your school. And I mean,
which is, by the way, worse than a supply team.
We can always look at the case in Australia, right? When they had, I can't remember what the incident was, but they did take guns out of people's hands, and it stopped the problem.
Well, of course, school shooters are nearly always, they lack fathers, they've got mental health problems, so it's not, again, necessarily the guns. But anyway, we're not going to get into, we're not going to solve that debate.
No. Lack of fathers.
Let's do another 10 minutes.
That's a bit of a stab in the dark.
Lack of fathers, yeah, there's a classic thing with school shooters that they've disturbed people without guidance, obviously. So it's not just the guns necessarily, it's the problems they have. Obviously, it doesn't help they've got access to guns in that case. It's horrific. But whether that's a reason to ban all guns in America...
Well, that's one brief question before we move on is, would it make a blind bit of difference to these school shootings, given the fact that how long would it take to rid America of guns, is the question. Would any legislation work? The country is awash with guns.
If you don't have guns, this couldn't happen.
Right,
Really
but what I mean is no guns an option
Yeah,
ever?
you can't get rid of them now.
Is it an option ever? Well, I guess it'll just take a big enough tragedy for people to really start looking at this seriously. But, you know, I do think when it comes to law enforcement, you know, there's an argument that law enforcement needs guns. The military obviously needs guns. A gun should be nowhere near a child. There should be stricter laws about people keeping guns in the home, how they're kept, especially when they have children in the house.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Amen to that. Well, let's move on to our next story. And where shall we head now? Shall we go to Florida? And more on this tit-for-tat story rumbling on in Florida, Nick.
Yeah, OK. Joe Biden mocks Republicans for going after Mickey Mouse with a Disney culture war row. So Biden has said, this is not your father's Republican Party. And, of course, it's definitely not your father's Democrat Party. And he said, Christ, they're going after Mickey Mouse. So taking the Lord's name in vain.
What is the story? Can you give us the background to this for those that don't know?
I absolutely can. So there's been all this stuff about Disney. All these videos came out about Disney. They're trying to sort of include queerness and more in their stories and so on. And interesting, all these Zoom calls came out, which was very interesting. The corporate president of Disney, Carrie Burke, said that she had one pansexual child and one trans child, which is interesting. And another one said that called herself a biromantic asexual. And
I've been that over the years.
Yeah, it's tough.
Like university.
And it's all this. We need to get more, representation for LGBTQ into Disney, whereas other
as well as ethnic minorities.
Okay, whereas other people are saying, hey, it's Disney. It's supposed to be stories about princesses and stuff and archetypal stories, and maybe let's not make it so politicized and so radically left as well. So that's the debate, and Biden's just had a quick swipe about that, basically with a sort of crude idea that they're going after Mickey Mouse.
I don't know that I could say that sexuality is political, and I can't even imagine what it's like being a young kid who's, gay, never ever seeing themselves represented on television. And I think, Disney has actually had one of their first gay characters. I mean, they thought Scar was gay, but they definitely allowed Lumiere from Beauty and the Beast. They allowed him to be gay, and I think it's a positive thing. Representation is
pretty
important.
camp as well.
Scar, Jeremy Lyons' character. Yes,
that was it. Yeah,
I would agree. So and Ursula was based on a drag queen, Divine.
Is that right?
Yes, she was.
You learn a new thing every day. And also, old Pinocchio never married, did he? Part 2 has reached an end. Trust me when I say that Part 3 will be mental, because we'll be discussing cheating husbands, patronising women's necks, and a cat with a hell of a story to tell. I don't think you want to miss it.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yeah, join.
Welcome back to Headliners, a first look at tomorrow's papers in the company of two fantastic comedians, two good friends of mine, Dana Alexander and Nick Dixon. Get stuck in, you two, that's what she said. Saturday's Mail and a council are removing a somewhat anachronistic relic.
Yeah, so time's up for the Black Boy Clock. Council to tear down 250-year-old Cotswold racist relic depicting black child with a club and a leaf skirt. But local slam woke minority constantly finding things to be outraged.
OK, and what do you think? Are these relics of the past unwelcome?
Well, I think what's interesting about the relics of the past is they don't often tell the full story. And I think when you live in a white society and the depiction of yourselves are as downtrodden, enslaved people, you know what I think? I think they should let us make a statue. How about that? And it's just a guy holding a whip. Would they like?
Well,
would you
maybe that's
appreciate
the answer
that?
to the statue thing is just more statues rather than removing old ones? Is that
Or put them in a museum. There's a lovely slavery museum in Liverpool. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to move on. We've taken down signs that say no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. We've renamed renamed Black Boy Lane in Tottenham, and there's been some discussion about that with White Ladies Road as well.
I mean, some of it, I don't know. What do you guys think? I mean, was it Brown Sugar, the Rolling Stones song that they've said they'll never perform again?
I have no idea, but that's my mother's license plate.
Yeah, I mean, the issue I've got with that is, I mean, that's obviously a piece of art. I think it addresses slavery. I think it's a bit sexist because it's about, you know, unsurprisingly for a Rolling Stones song, it's basically about shagging somebody. But it incorporates the issue of slavery. But now they've said they won't sing it, and I just wonder, well, I don't know, is that progress? I mean, it's a song that people of all races, creeds and colours have enjoyed for decades. Does it help anyone that they stop singing that song?
Was it their choice?
Yeah.
No, let them make a choice.
Do you think that you want art just to be out there? You don't think?
Yeah, I already wrote an article for Spike defending that song, just defending songs in general and artistic. You know, this thing about censoring art, I'm very against. So I've already so that's my stance on that. A bit different with statues. I mean, I don't generally like things being torn down, but the Black Boy is not the hill I'm going to die on. But I will die more on the hill of brown sugar and such things.
Yeah, fascinating.
77% of the people in the town say take it down, and I know you like democracy.
Yeah.
Too right. I think on that we can all agree. Well, we cover the big stories here at Headliners, and this one is not one of them. Let's talk about women's necks, Nick.
Absolutely. Well, this is about women heading the ball in football. We did one the other day on Free Speech Nation about are women too emotional to play football, so now they're trying to get me in trouble with another women's football story. Should heading be banned? So the idea is that women have weaker necks and worse visual awareness.
Last week they were more emotional. This week they've got weak necks.
They've got weak necks. And
we've really got it in for female footballers, haven't we?
Yes. Well, we're just going by the facts, Mark. There's also a claim that they head the ball with greater acceleration than men, and that's part of it. So it's interesting because there's been calls for heading to be outlawed in the men's game because of dementia and brain damage. Many people from the 1966 World Cup winning team have had problems with that. And that is a big problem. And then people have suggested, now there's this thing, you should only do 10 headers per week. In training is the rule. I don't know if anyone's actually following that. So my problem with it is, of course I don't want anyone to get brain damage. My problem is,
Thanks for that caveat.
Yeah, speaking of the men, we have to say things like that these days. Speaking of the men's game first, the problem is sport's not really about safety. Like, tomorrow we've got Tyson Fury and Dillian Whyte bashing each other's heads in, and that's sport. It's not supposed to be safe. So this safetyism's creeped into football. So to some degree, sport is about risk. In the women's game, I'm less sure because, one, I don't really watch it and I don't really want to speak for it. If women want to remove heading, I'm going to say it's up to the women's game to see what they want to do. That's my stance.
Are you a footballer?
Basketball. And I did play a little bit of soccer when I was a kid, if that's what you mean.
Yeah.
By the football, I'm Canadian.
I think, by the way, I think resolve this, which is I think heading's bad for everyone and we should just stop doing it.
I play five-a-side once a week. I try to never head it. The ball should be on the ground anyway. That's how you play the beautiful game, especially at five-a-side. That's what Brian Clough said.
Definitely.
I think think if you're going to take it away for women, you got to take it away for men, because a lot of people like to complain that, you know, the women's game isn't as exciting as the men. But when you start clipping their wings and making the rules different for them than it is for the men, it's no wonder why. It's almost like in stand-up comedy. If you're a woman who swears or does more, you know, blue material, it's like, oh, have her at birthday parties. It's like they're trying to put you under different parameters than the men, and then try to compare you on an even.
The lack of heading would ruin football, so in that case, we need to keep it for both.
Now you're talking.
Even though I don't want to head it in my five-a-side, but that's my choice as a, you know, amateur.
You and your five-a-side, by the way. Wow. Love to see your legs one day. Quite something to behold, especially on a hangover. Now, Saturday's Sun has a friend and a comedic colleague. Who's going to go for this one?
Yes, well, I don't know her, so I think it'll be easier for me to do. My husband cheated on me with his best friend's girlfriend. I am devastated, says Britain's Got Talent star Francine Lewis.
Who is a good friend of GB News. She's been on my show a few times.
Okay.
Very funny comedian.
Yeah, so I'm sure she'll love that we're talking about her right now. So she was with her partner for 17 years. I mean, this guy knows how to pick him. If he's going to stay with his best friend's wife, they better stay together, because he's just lost the mother of his kid and probably his best friend.
Yeah, it's not a good look, is it? I've got to say. My heart goes out to Francine. And Francine, no loss, frankly. You're worth a lot better than that. Another comedic legend in the news now, Nick.
Yeah, and I really like Francine as well, just for the record. She's very nice.
All right, she's not single yet. Slow down.
She's cool, but Bill Murray reportedly accused of inappropriate behaviour on film set. Not Bill Murray. I mean, you wonder. I mean, look, Hollywood's got a terrible record, obviously, and so now it's going the other way, where anything inappropriate you assume is they might overreact to. We all hope that Bill Murray has not done anything inappropriate because he's such a legend. It's also interesting, and they don't say what it is. It's very, very vague, but they've ceased production. And it's also interesting that it's directed by Aziz Ansari, who got in trouble for a kind of bad date that got out of hand. And so he's probably extra cautious about it. So he's shut down the production, or someone shut down the production, and we don't exactly know why, but that's the story.
Not a great story.
Yeah, another one bites the dust. I'm hoping he just farted in somebody's face or something.
Yeah, let's hope it was a jolly jape and nothing more sinister. A YouTuber has had a novel approach to driving up his view count, Dana.
They are getting thirsty, aren't they? So the FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, found out that this gentleman, a YouTube star, had deliberately jumped out of his plane so that he could film the crash on his GoPro, and they've revoked his pilot license for doing so.
Shocker. Absolutely. They'll do anything, won't they, to go viral, Nick? Where does this end?
Wreck a plane? How much would that cost?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's kind of like Darwinism in action. Oh, I think we've got the video. Let's take a look. OK, so here we go. We've got this guy at about probably 20,000 feet in a biplane. Out he gets. That's what happens. That's how you get your followers up, Nick. Take note.
Yeah,
Maybe you could do headliners from one of those planes.
This is where I've been going wrong, Mark. I've been offering subtle takes on the culture war. I should be jumping out of planes.
By the way, what a beautiful view. An amazing blue sky. He's pretty brave, and there goes the crash.
Pretty dangerous. He doesn't know who that could have hit, you know?
Yeah, it's not good, is it? There's a sign at King's Cross train station. It says, please don't take selfies on this elevator because people have been falling down and having bad accidents. And you just kind of think it was Charles Darwin in action,
Darwin
isn't
Award,
it?
yeah.
The Darwin Award. Crazy days. Welcome to Bonkers 2022. More dating preferences now. Any good advice on this, Nick? You're a bit of a Lothario, aren't you?
Now, are we doing the bread one? Or are we doing
the evil? Bread.
Oh, we'll do bread. This is a great story. Lured into bread. I mean, that's already a great pun there. Women in the medieval period would knead dough on their body before baking it and serving it to their husbands in the hope it would improve their sex life. Historians reveal. You'll be familiar with this, Mark, but this is. Mrs.
Dolan tried it once. She rubbed bread onto her naked body. Unfortunately, I'm gluten intolerant, so
nightmare.
I came out in hives.
Oh,
Who saw that backfiring?
It was just that my head was basically a knight dunked in the toilet basin, I'm afraid.
Oh.
There are all these. This is kind of like the Cosmopolitan of the medieval period. There's all these suggestions of things you can do, and so there was this penitential guide written by a 10th century bishop, and this was like people would come and confess things, and so this is how they'd hear about all this. And one of them was that women would put live fish in their vagina.
Until they died.
Until it died, and then they'd cook it and serve it to their husband. However, the claim is that was probably made up. But so that may or may not have happened. But yeah, these are some medieval solutions, Mark.
Dana, Any stories? Any personal anecdotes? Have you ever misused bread?
Have I ever I probably shouldn't eat it at all as chubby as I am. No, I have not misused bread. I've worked in a lot of service industry jobs as a young woman, and one of the things I couldn't, like, you could be the rudest person on the face of the planet. I could never tamper with someone's food. That is absolutely disgusting to me.
Yeah.
The fish, that has to be a lie. Like, how do you even get that in there?
Well, I'll show you later.
That's a micro.
Can I just say that we'll both need a drink? The Guardian now, and the right to roam. What is that, and why are we talking about it? Who's this story for?
This is me. So a minister is defending shelving the right to roam report. The countryside is a place for business. So what they found out is that, 92% or 93% of, or no, 97%, I should say, of British land is actually privately owned. So people aren't allowed to roam on these fields. And the argument against that is, yeah, this is a cornfield. I'm running a business. This isn't your time for hikes. You know, there's hundreds of thousands of miles of walking paths throughout this country, and they just figured that people should use those.
Which I think is not unreasonable, do you?
No, I don't think it's unreasonable.
I think the farmers have a hard rap already as it is.
Yeah, well, of course, I'm from the country, born in the woods, Mark. I'm from Cumbria. I tried to gauge...
Raised by wolves, I'm told.
Exactly.
Which explains a lot.
It does.
Including the smell.
I tried to gauge what my people think of this, and they're mixed. Some people say that this is the 90th anniversary of the kind of trespass rule, which some people say was a good thing, and there's this ancient right to roam. However, yes, the opposite is that I grew up, people just wander into our garden, and there's enough land to roam anyway. So do we actually need this? Because there is such a thing as, a private owner. So those are the...
Now, look, let's see if we can squeeze in a couple of quick stories. An electric nose to discern whiskies. Tell me about this, Nick.
Electric nose can tell real Scotch from sham drams, another top pun from the Times. So this is, it's called NOSE, and it can identify the difference between 3 blended malts and 3 single malts. And this is because the fake whiskey industry is a big thing. 21 out of 55 bottles of rare Scotch were deemed to be outright fakes. So this is going to solve that problem. And basically, whiskey fans. I don't drink, so I don't know. I'm indifferent.
You've got no skin in the game.
No.
Well, look, how about this next story? And it's our final story from The Guardian. A one-eyed cat with an autobiography that I want to read.
Oh, I know. One-eyed Joe, the cat, went missing for 5 years and was found on a Scottish oil rig. I wonder if that's where Miss McCann is. Anyways, animal welfare officers have no idea how the cat, whose real name is Dexter, ended up on the offshore rig. And it took 5 years to be reunited with its owner after it was found on an offshore oil rig. And then the cat ended up befriending ended up living at a prison and befriending the guards and ended up living there. Yeah.
It is inspirational, and it shows what amazing survivors cats are. So when you lose your cat, right, it probably hasn't been squashed by an HGV. It's probably just found a more interesting home.
Yes, and chip them. That's how they found them.
Chip that. Well, you've got to chip cats, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's law, but yes, I definitely think you should.
I actually chipped Mrs. Dolan recently, and it's been a game changer.
Where is she now?
In a cupboard in the house.
As long as she's not at your best friend's house,
locked
right?
from the outside. It's a long story.
You didn't even need the chip, Mark. You always know where she is.
I don't think we needed it. I mean, look, these cats are amazing. Are you a cat man?
Not a cat person. I don't know why people have cats. Cats would kill you if they were large enough. People should have dogs, which are actually nice.
Comedians would kill you if they were large enough.
Well,
Let's not forget that. Can I say that it's been an unutterable joy to have your company, both of you, tonight. It's been a lively and brilliant chat. The fantastic Dana Alexander and Nick Dixon. Tomorrow, I've got Diane Spencer and Andrew Doyle, and I'm back at 9. See you then.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling.
Noise is being made here. Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to